Welcome to Research Talk. I hope you all are doing well. In our previous videos, we talked about three methodologies. We talked about descriptive phenomenology. We talked about interpretive phenomenology. We talked about Lifeworld, reflective Lifeworld research approach. So that's another methodology. When it comes to phenomenology, there are other approaches which are kind of similar or a little bit different from what we have already discussed. So I'm not going to cover those approaches right now. You can go and read more about it. One of the phenomenological approaches which is popular in psychology is called interpretive phenomenological analysis. It is very similar to von Manen's approach, which is also interpretive hermeneutic approach to phenomenology. So a lot of similarities with that. So if you want to know more, you can get a book and read more about interpretive phenomenological analysis. But more or less, if you look at the phenomenological approaches of conducting research, you can divide it in descriptive phenomenology versus interpretive phenomenology, and some approaches have a sort of a combination of both interpretive as well as descriptive. So that was about the main approaches, methodologies in phenomenology. If you want to know more about this phenomenology, I recommend you reading some books where von Manen's book is very detailed. So I recommend that book highly if you want to learn more about hermeneutic phenomenology. In today's video, I'm going to talk about a very important topic, and the topic is how to conduct a literature review in phenomenology. This topic seems a little bit like naive in the sense like, okay, what do you mean? Like, what kind of literature review should be done? Are we not doing literature review? And the answer is, it may seem a little bit weird, but the approach that phenomenology takes when it comes to literature review is very different than what you may already have learned in other approaches. So let's begin and talk more about it. So in quantitative research, you already have learned to do systematic literature review. So when you start your study, you work on your research question, and at the same time you go through the literature and you do a systematic, comprehensive literature review. And why we do a comprehensive literature review? One reason is obviously developing rationale for the study, that why I'm doing this study. So when you do lit review, it helps you understand what are the things which has already been explored related to this topic, and what are some unanswered questions. So you try to find gaps in the knowledge in literature, and then you set the rationale for the study. So that is the purpose of doing a comprehensive literature review in research. When it comes to phenomenological research, this approach of doing a comprehensive analysis can become problematic. Why? If you remember in our previous video, when we talked about the whole concept of phenomenology and methodologies, one focus of phenomenological researcher is to understand, explore the phenomenon. And in that process of exploration, you want to make sure that you do not bring your own bias, you do not bring your own preconceived notion about the phenomenon. And this is where the problem arises. If you do a comprehensive literature review, what is happening? You are learning all these different things about the phenomenon. So you are learning the theories and all these things. So theories, concepts, and all the ideas on the phenomenon. As a researcher, as you become all these theories and concepts related to the phenomenon, it creates a preconceived ideas related to the phenomenon. So it becomes very hard, not very hard, but somewhat hard to bracket or I'm writing bridle as well, because some research approaches do bridling, some do bracketing. But in summary, what it means is you set aside your preconceived notion when you are exploring the phenomenon, so that you could see the newness in the phenomenon, so that you could identify if there is anything which you may miss, because you have already learned so much about the phenomenon. You become to somewhat saturated with the concept, with the theories related to the phenomenon. So having a bracketing or bridling attitude becomes difficult if a researcher doing a phenomenological study does a comprehensive, thorough literature review. And that is why overall, no matter what approach you take in phenomenology, they suggest not to do a comprehensive lit review. It does not mean that you don't do it at all, but you do enough rather than comprehensive literature review. So the question is, what is enough? How much literature review should I do, which is enough to help me bridle and bracket while I'm exploring the phenomena? So how much is enough? So the first thing we recommend is do initial kind of what are some major things related to the phenomenon that is there in the literature, but don't go into rather than initial, I think I should say it partial. Do a partial lit review rather than a comprehensive lit review. Partial meaning that you are going through the literature and just familiarizing yourself with some of the key knowledge concepts in the field, but you are not doing a very comprehensive, detailed lit review. So we recommend partial lit review when you are starting your study. And this partial lit review will lead to prepare you or orient you to the phenomenon. Meaning that if you know more about a topic, you may feel like you know everything, and you may also feel like, oh, there is nothing new in this phenomenon. You might become a little bit saturated in terms of how you look, how you perceive, how the phenomenon present itself to you. Do you have the enough sensitivity to really capture those, the way the phenomenon present itself to you? So those things are possible when you know only enough to orient yourself toward the phenomenon rather than being influenced and be more biased towards a phenomenon. So coming back to the question that we started with, how much lit review should be done in phenomenological research designs? The answer is partial literature review should be done. So what you do, you start the study with partial lit review, and once you have finished your study, you have analyzed your data, you come back and then you do a thorough literature review. So we do, as phenomenologists, we do comprehensive lit review, but we don't do it the way it is done in quantitative research or other approaches. In phenomenological research approach, you start with partial, conduct the whole study. After data analysis, you go back, do a comprehensive literature review, and that comprehensive literature review helps you to look at your findings and situate the findings in the context. So that's the purpose of why we don't do initial comprehensive literature review. I hope this really clarifies what should be your approach when you are conducting your lit review for a phenomenological research study. I'll see you in another video talking about another topic in phenomenology. Till then, have a good rest of the day. See you soon.